Hey folks, how's it going? This is Iron Seagull here, back with another My Sims 4 wishlist video. So, I haven't made one of these about an occult yet, and now that vampires are done, witches is definitely the next one that I want to see returning from a previous Sims game. I think witches have a whole lot of potential to be amazing in The Sims 4. Vampires is my favorite game pack right now, and I think the vampires are leagues better than they were in the previous games, so I'm hoping that they could do the same thing with a witches game pack. The format would be similar to how vampires works with the leveling up system and all that, but it also takes some inspiration from Making Magic and Supernatural for some specific spells, and there's a couple of other ideas that I have that they haven't really done for witches in The Sims before that could also make things more interesting. So let's start off with, how do you become a witch? Well, there'd be a few ways to do this. The first and easiest way by far would be to just make one and create a sim, just like you can with vampires and aliens right now. So just be like, you click on the new sim thing, and then, yeah, you just have an option to make a witch. They wouldn't have any dark forms or disguises, but they would have some unique animations like waving their wand or whatever while you're creating them, so there's still at least a little bit of difference while you're still in Create a Sim. However, there could be a few new traits exclusive to witches, such as Magically Gifted, which can make your Sims gain experience points and the alchemy skill faster. I'll talk about those two things later. There'd also be an aspiration where you just aspire to become the best witch possible by maxing out your witch experience by the end. It's also possible to make a new witch through genetics with their offspring, and you can also have a spell where you can turn other Sims into witches, and if you're a human Sim, then you can also ask a witch to turn you into one. There's also a special potion that can turn you into a witch, and if you can't make it yourself, then there's still a chance that you can find it through dig sites or fishing. So you finished making Harry Potter, Bayonetta, and Sabrina the Teenage Witch, but where are they gonna live? Well, I think just like with vampires, there should be a new, smaller sized world. The look would be heavily inspired by Magic Town from Making Magic, so I just really wanted to set the mood there. And yeah, it could have like a very similar perpetual fall look. I mean, Appaloosa Plains did that with The Sims 3, and it still worked out when Seasons rolled about. And in terms of the number of lots, it'd be pretty similar to Forgotten Hollow, although I'd want it to be at least like a little bit bigger, maybe 6 or 7 lots, but at least 3 residential lots, 1 park with a broom riding arena similar to what we had in The Sims 3 Supernatural, and Harry Potter fans rejoice because there'd be a new magic school, where it's kind of similar to how you can take yoga classes at the spa, except a little bit more structured. There'd be a few different class types. There'd be one where you learn how to make your own wand, because just like with The Sims 3 Supernatural, there'd be different kinds of wands that you can make that affect your efficiency in terms of spell casting. There'd also be a spell casting class where you can even duel other students if you want to. And there'd also be classes involving the alchemy skill. Through taking these classes at the magic school, you can gain the spellcasting and alchemy skills faster than you would by yourself. It's not free though, actually, it would be pretty expensive, so it's not something you can immediately take advantage of, especially if you're playing as a poor family. And while on that subject, I'll also mention that to connect it to my Lunar Cycles video that I did last year, you could also build spellcasting and alchemy faster by doing so during full moons, blue moons, and solar eclipses. The spellcasting skill would only go up to level 5 because what that would decide is how well your Sims can pull off the spells and actually achieve the positive effect. And it would also affect your Sims' animations as they're spellcasting, because at first they're gonna look pretty clumsy. They may do a little animation where there's like a little spark when it fails, but then they try again and then it succeeds. And at level 5, they can actually have the option of spell casting with their bare hands and not even needing a wand. So then you're probably wondering, how do the Sims learn the different spells? Well, it'd be structured pretty similarly to the Vampire Powers tree. I decided to suggest this method because it gives us a lot more freedom over what spells our witches learn, and what they don't learn as well. Because even as the most powerful witch, you cannot learn every single spell, so choose wisely. And here's a short list of ideas for spells that I have. Most of them are inspired by previous games. They've covered so much, I couldn't really think of many actual new spells that they've never done before, but here they are. So there'd be a toad spell where you can turn your Sims into a toad for 12 hours, just like in Making Magic. I love turning the obsessed fan from Superstar into toads, by the way. It was really hilarious. But then there's also a spell for being able to upgrade appliances and plumbing. There'd be another one where you can transmutate objects, kind of like in The Sims 3 Supernatural, where if it succeeds, it can turn into a really valuable object, or if it fails, it can turn into something that's not really worth much at all, like a teddy bear. Then there'd be an instant clean spell, which can clean the whole lot. A banish spell, which teleports the target away from your current neighborhood, so it'd be really handy for getting rid of unwanted family members or house guests. And there'd be a clone spell, so you could easily like send your clone off to work and have them do all that stuff for you. There'd be a love charm that could make the target fall in love with you, or if you cast it on yourself, make yourself like really attractive to everyone. There'd be a happiness charm where the target would become happy for a little while. There'd be a simoleon spell, which grants 2,000 simoleons if it succeeds, but if it fails, oh boy, that would take away half your funds. So even if you're a rich sim, you gotta be careful. And then there'd be a rage spell, which makes the target instantly turn to the enraged emotion, which, in case you didn't already know, has a chance of actually killing the sim. And then there'd be a dizzy spell, which can make your sim instantly dazed. There'd be the freeze spell, like the freeze ray from Get to Work. And then there'd be a weather spell, which actually would require seasons, where you can change the weather to whatever weather you want, but if it fails, then there's a good chance that it'll summon a bad weather type, like a heavy thunderstorm or hail. There'd also be an animal spell, which is pretty inspired by Making Magic, where you can turn a sim into a random pet, like a cat or a dog or a raccoon or a fox. And you can also turn your pet into a human if you want. Of course, that would require cats and dogs. And you can also summon ghosts if you want. Another spell would be to summon a meteor, which would be a very high level spell. And that would bring back the meteor showers from The Sims 3 Ambitions. So, yeah, you better make sure you stay clear of a big shadow. Otherwise, your sim is gonna get struck and will very, very likely die by meteor. I guess that would be another sort of thing they could introduce through a Seasons pack first. Or, well, after, if they do release Witches before Seasons. Because, yeah, I guess it would be kind of weird to include Death by Meteor exclusively in the Witches game pack. But one spell that I would definitely have at the top tier is the Spell of the Undead, where you can make a target a zombie for 24 hours. So, yep, I'm suggesting zombies be put into the same pack as witches. Zombies, I don't think, would take as much effort as witches, definitely not nearly as much. And especially since they managed to include skeletons in Jungle Adventure, I don't think it's impossible to pull off. I'd have the zombies be basically the same as they were in The Sims 3, except not have those zombie outbreaks during full moons, because those really bug me. But other than that, yeah, I can't really think of anything new or exciting for zombies, so they'd be a very secondary feature. Okay, so I guess that didn't really end up being a short list after all, but there's a lot of different things that I wanted to cover, especially since witches can basically act as glorified cheats in a lot of respects. So that can already really boost the spell count that can be included in this pack, because there'd just be so many things where it's like, okay, it's already in the game as a cheat, but it would just be made as a spell. I did mention spellcasting duels a bit earlier, so how that would work is you can challenge another witch anytime, anywhere, but another way you can do that is through the dueling platform, which would be very similar to the one in Make and Magic, where you have two sims, one standing on either end, and then you choose your spell, and it has some sort of element attached to it, and if it is weak against the other spell, then you lose a point. If you cast a spell that's strong against the other one, then you gain a point. So yeah, it'd be almost exactly like the Make and Magic dueling platform, but I figured that'd be a good idea to bring back, so that you have a more strategic type of duel and not just basing it off of power levels. One basic thing about witches that I did not get to mention earlier is that they would have all the same motives as a normal sim, but there'd be one extra one called mana, or mana, however you want to say it. But it would be very similar to vampire energy, and maybe it could be a color pink instead of the purple of vampire energy, but it would be something that would be expended as your sim does spell casting. So you gotta be careful, because if your sim uses up all of it, then they're going to be a little bit sluggish and not be able to use any spells for a while. Although, if your witch owns a cat, then they actually don't have their mana drain as fast, so that can be really handy. And yes, with the experience points, they would be gained in a similar way to vampires, where you can gain the points by spellcasting or studying spellcasting. But I don't think they'd need the weaknesses system. I don't know. I feel like if they did have weaknesses, it wouldn't be as obvious as some of the vampire ones, like burning in the sun and being more vulnerable to thirst and that sort of thing. The spellcasting skill would already kind of take the place of weaknesses anyways at the beginning, since, yeah, that can already affect your sim's performance and cause failures and that sort of thing. And now to talk about the alchemy skill more. So the interesting thing about alchemy is that unlike spellcasting, any sim can do it. You don't have to be a witch in order to perform it. With the recipes, some of them would be the same as witch spells, like the emotion-related ones, the spell of the undead, but you'd still need a high skill in order to make it. But there would be some other ones that have differences, like being able to make your sim or another sim fall asleep instantly for a few hours, change your target to slim or overweight, stink gas that would make the target vomit, one that increases the skill gain rate, one that makes a sim hate another sim at random, the bottled recipes for turning you or another sim into a witch, vampire, plant sim, or skeleton, depending on the packs that you have. I deliberately left aliens out of this since they're meant to be more extraterrestrial than an occult, so I don't think it really makes sense to be able to turn your sim into an alien through alchemy. And there'd be another recipe where you could make a child or teen clone of yourself. You can change all your traits to random ones with a different recipe. And if you have jungle adventure, then you can make a cure for the jungle adventure curses. And unlike spellcasting, you do need to gather the appropriate ingredients in order to make an alchemy recipe each time. And these can vary from harvestables to other sorts of objects in the game. Even though the spellcasting would offer a lot, I still think it'd be a good idea to bring alchemy back too, because then there's still another way to add on to your gameplay, even if you don't plan on using witches. So at this point, I've covered pretty much everything that I've wanted to about witches, but I do want to add in a couple of activities too, especially since with vampires, we did get the pipe organ, so witches deserves their own sort of equivalent, and I think they could have candle making. So this is heavily inspired by a mod I reviewed by Ice Munmun, where there was a candle making skill, and there's a ton of different candles that you could make. So it would work pretty similarly to her mod. Maybe even the aroma of certain candles could make it so that your witch's mana doesn't drain as fast, or increases their spellcasting skill rate. One other suggestion would be to add the beekeeping box from The Sims 3 Supernatural, and from there you could get honey, which is one of the ingredients that you can use for alchemy. And I did mention the broom riding arena earlier, where your Sims can, well, ride their brooms around, and it could help restore their mana a little bit, and yeah, you can have your Sims own a broom. Although, unfortunately, since we don't have cars in the game, at least not yet, I don't know, but since we don't have cars, it's hard for me to say if it's really realistic for me to expect to be able to use brooms on roads, or even to just travel across terrain. But it would be cool if they could pull that off. And that pretty much wraps up this video on what I'd like to see with a Witches game pack. I guess it is a tad ambitious. I guess, if anything, I would cut the candle making skill, since there is already the alchemy skill that I really think should be in the pack, but I also did want to suggest something a little bit different that we haven't had in the series before, and yeah, I think taking some inspiration from Ice Munmun's mod would be pretty cool. But overall, I think they could really build off the foundation of the Vampires game pack to make something even better, kind of like with Jungle Adventure compared to Outdoor Retreat. So let me know in the comment section below what you'd like to see with Witches in The Sims 4. I'm really looking forward to hearing your ideas, especially since this is a fairly popular idea. I think they are the most requested occults to return at the moment. But be sure to check out my playlist of my Sims 4 wishlist. I have over 20 episodes now. It's kind of crazy. I wonder how many of those there will be by the end of this year. But yeah, be sure to leave a like or a comment or even subscribe, because it lets me know that you like my channel, my videos, and it helps you keep up to date more easily with the latest content from me. I do videos on The Sims, Sonic the Hedgehog, and more. So I will talk to you all later, and have a great day. Thanks for watching!